Welcome to this program in a series of European rail journeys. In this program, we travel through Belgium from the North Sea port of Zeebrugge to the city at the very heart of Europe, Brussels, from where the first train in continental Europe ran in 1835. This compact country, less than 325 kilometers across at its widest point, is easily accessible thanks to the country's superb railway system. The first stop on our journey is the beautiful city of Bruges, described by many as the Venice of the North. Take a leisurely stroll along some of Europe's most stunning canals and bridges. Taste some of the 750 different beers and see the world-famous chocolates being made. Next stop, Ghent. Like Bruges, the histories of these two cities are everywhere, written in their streets and buildings, their art and culture. Belgium is a country that produces museums in vast quantities, from Rubens to Tintin. Fly over the battlefields of Flanders to see the haunting sight of the rows of white headstones commemorating those who gave their lives during 2 world wars. The land that is now Belgium has been coveted and fought over for thousands of years. It was after the revolution in 1830 that the nation of Belgium came into being. In 1831, the London Conference recognized the independence of Belgium and established it as a constitutional monarchy. Leopold I was awarded the crown. More recently, Belgium joined the European Community in 1957, and Brussels became the capital of the organization. Brussels is at the heart of what may soon be a federal Europe. The journey starts at Zeebrugge, somewhere more usually associated with the sea than with traveling on a European railway. The main role of Zeebrugge is as a harbour, and it's the second largest fishing town in Belgium. The busy port is becoming increasingly important for passenger and freight ferries from all over Europe. Day and night, large cranes creep along the docksides, manoeuvring an endless stream of container traffic. Belgium has been one of Europe's main trading ports for centuries, and her association with the sea and maritime history is legend. Trade agreements with England across the North Sea go back to 1406. Merchants used the rivers and canals of the so-called Flemish Road to gain access to Europe from the earliest times. As well as trade, shipping brought visitors across the seas on their grand Victorian tours of Europe. This association with the sea is well illustrated by the National Maritime Museum in Antwerp. Back on dry land, the Vichinal tramways survived the Second World War. They're one of the most comprehensive urban tramway networks ever built. Today, they fight with the car for space on the streets of Zeebrugge. Our journey inland will be by train. From Zeebrugge, there are regular train services on Belgium's national system. Timetables and travel cards are readily available for the network. The electric system is fast and efficient. The first stop on our journey to Brussels is Bruges, the capital of West Flanders and probably the most popular tourist destination. Stations in Belgium have travel information clearly displayed for the benefit of visitors, and the comprehensive nature of passenger services makes it the easiest way to get about. Cycling is a great way to see some of the loveliest and hidden parts of Belgium. You can buy a combined rail ticket which includes your bicycle hire and train fare from any of 35 hire railway stations. Bruges is one of Europe's best preserved medieval cities and noted as the prettiest in Belgium. Arnold Bennett, the 19th century English novelist, said in 1896, "The difference between Bruges and other cities is that in the latter you look about for the picturesque and don't find it easily, while in Bruges, assailed on every side by the picturesque, you look curiously for the unpicturesque and don't find it easily." Two of the best ways to see the splendours of Bruges are by foot or taking a cruise along some of the 10 kilometres of canals. In the country as a whole, the extensive canal network carries more goods than the railways. The waterways link Bruges to other cities in Belgium, to the coast, and important industrial centres. The canal-side roads and paths make for excellent walking and cycling. For one of the most exciting impressions of Bruges, you must climb the 366 steep steps up to the bell tower. From the top, you have a breathtaking view of the town and surrounding countryside. The towers of the Church of Our Saviour, the Church of Our Lady and the Bell Tower comprise the triumvirate of Bruges towers, which make the city visible from so far away. From the observation tower you look down on the Markt, the main square of Bruges. In the centre of the square is its memorial to the liberation fighters Jan Bredel and Pieter de Koninck, who led the city revolt against the French in 1302. On the right-hand side of the Markt is the provincial Hof. The neo-Gothic building is home to the West Flanders provincial government. Opposite, the Kranenburg, now a restaurant, has often played a significant historical role, notably in the 15th century, when Emperor Maximilian of Austria was imprisoned here in 1488 for 100 days. A short stroll from the Markt is the Burg, one of the finest medieval squares in Europe. Here the Stadhuis, or Town Hall, is one of the oldest and most beautiful in Belgium, and a Gothic masterpiece. It was Bruges' economic decline lasting 5 centuries that preserved the buildings we now enjoy. There was never any money to demolish and rebuild. It's nicknamed La Mort, because, they say, time seems to have stood still there. The Vismarkt, or fish market, was built in 1821, and it's still a thriving market, selling fish from the North Sea. Away from the fish market, the sound of horses' hooves echo all around the quaint cobbled streets, steeped in history. Belgium is world famous for its chocolates. A trip to Roos's Chocolate World in Bruges is a chocoholic's dream come true. As well as sampling the wonderful selection, you can see the craft of chocolate making demonstrated. A mould is held under a stream of chocolate, placed on a shaking table to remove the air bubbles. The excess chocolate's removed and the mould put into the refrigerator to set. Now for the filling. In this case, it's a nut filling called praline. Once more to the chocolate stream and back to the refrigerator. Now for the best bit. After all that chocolate, time to drink. Beer is a major industry in Belgium, with no fewer than 400 breweries producing 750 different kinds. You can take a tour of a museum to find out more about the Benedictine monk St. Arnold, commemorated for spreading the art of brewing across most of Belgium. He tried to find out why prosperous citizens and noblemen had a higher life expectancy than the common people. The reason, he thought, was the fact that the better off were able to quench their thirst with beer, whilst the less well-off had no choice but to drink the often contaminated water. Today, most of the 12 million hectolitres brewed are destined for export. To walk off the hangover, stroll through the park and around Lake Minnewater, the Lake of Love. Originally, this was the outer harbour of Bruges before the river silted up and cut the city off from the sea. Emperor Maximilian ordered that swans be kept on the river for evermore after his councillor Pieter Lanchals was beheaded. Southwest of Bruges, towards the border with France, lies Flanders Field, a vast area of countryside that witnessed a military battle on an unprecedented scale. Row upon row of gravestones in the many cemeteries testify to the carnage of war. The graves go on and on. The peacefulness of the place and the solidarity in death of the troops from all sides makes for a moving and strangely comforting experience. Here, the Paul Capel British Cemetery contains the graves of 6,545 British, 528 Canadian, 117 Australian, 237 from New Zealand, 10 South Africans, and 8 from Newfoundland. Some 6,232 sailors, soldiers, and airmen are not identified by name. To travel around Belgium by train, choose to buy a Belgian Tour Rail Pass. This will give you 5 days unlimited rail travel within a month-long period and will prove exceptional value. We travel now to Ghent, a city developed on the back of a rapidly expanding textile industry during the Middle Ages. At one time, it was the second largest city north of the Alps. Ghent made its mark on Belgian history in 610 AD, when pagan inhabitants threw Christian missionary St. Amand into the River Scheldt. It's a vibrant town with areas of great historical and artistic interest. Larger than Bruges, most of the city's historic attractions are clustered together within walking or cycling distance, or you could hop on a tram. No other city in Belgium has so many listed monuments. This, the capital of East Flanders, is the focal point of the Flemish nationality. Ghent is the third largest industrial region in Belgium and the country's second largest port, which is connected to the North Sea by canal. By the 12th century, Ghent had developed into the largest textile centre in the world and became a wealthy town. Today, it's a city built on diverse economic interests. For the most beautiful view of Ghent, head to St. Michael's Bridge, over the River Lyre. Look out across the Romanesque, Gothic and Baroque facades of the warehouses and guild halls on the Kornlei and Graslei. Together, they formed the commercial centre of the medieval port. Ghent's main church, St. Bavon's Cathedral, is without doubt one of the finest Gothic churches in the Low Countries. The development of architectural styles can be traced from the late Romanesque period. Charles V was baptized here in 1500. The present-day high altar is made of marble, gilded wood, copper and bronze, and dates from the beginning of the 18th century. Opposite the cathedral is the Belfort. From the top you can explore the layout of the city, where, unlike the Belfort in Bruges, you can travel to the top by lift. The 90-metre tower is a symbol of the freedom of the citizens of Ghent. It's been crowned by a gilded copper dragon since the 14th century. In the Bootmarkt stands the formidable Stadhuis. The town hall was built over long periods and in different styles. The oldest part of the building dating from the early 16th century. Opposite is St. Jorishof, built in the 13th century and one of the oldest hotels in Europe. Charles V and Napoleon have both been guests here. The largest and most important castle in Ghent is the Gravenstein. The gloomy medieval fortress of the Counts of Flanders is encircled on one side by the waters of the Lyre. Modelled on the castles of the Crusaders in Syria and the Holy Land, it served as a residence and fortress. After the 14th century, it was turned into a dungeon, and its inner courtyard was used as a place of execution. Before we leave the city, we've still to meet the world-famous Mad Meg. She's not an eccentric Ghent citizen, but a 16-ton cannon made in the 15th century, which when fired for the first time, cracked. Now to battle. The Battle of Waterloo, to be precise. It was here in June 1815 that Napoleon, Emperor of France, suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of a united force of Prussia and England, which left 11,000 people dead. The best view of the site on which the fighting took place is from the famous Lion's Hill, created on the spot where the Prince of Orange was wounded. The hill is over 40 meters high, built from soil scraped from the battlefield. It takes its name from the cast-iron statue of a lion with its right forepaw placed on a globe. Legend has it that the lion is made from cannons and cannonballs. It's worth taking a 28-minute train ride from Ghent to Oudenaarde. This sleepy town was once famous for its tapestry weaving industry. Oudenaarde's glory is its Stadhuis, located in the expansive markt in the town centre. Built in the late 16th century, designed by the Brussels architect Henry van Peyder. The Gothic carved portico and twin tiers of nobly proportioned windows, topped with a wedding cake roof. Back on our train, we take a short trip away from our planned route to visit Antwerp and Lyre. Electrification of Belgium railways began in a small scale in 1935, with conversion of the Brussels to Antwerp main line. The country and its railways suffered exceptional devastation during the two world wars. After the Second War, the destruction was so complete that rapid modernization was introduced to include all the principal main lines, all 880 miles of them. Arriving at Central Station in Antwerp, one of the finest stations in Europe, you can marvel at the railway cathedral with its domed ticket hall, built over 100 years ago. Antwerp is many things at once: a major port, a diamond centre, An industrial nucleus, the city of Rubens. Medieval charm and modern industry located side by side. On the right bank of the river is Antwerp's oldest building, the Steen, built in the 12th century. This castle is home to the Maritime Museum. The collection of old maritime maps, nautical instruments and model ships show the importance of the sea in the history of the city. It's said that Antwerp has God to thank for the River Scheldt, and the Scheldt to thank for everything else. Today, Antwerp is Belgium's chief port and second largest city. It became of commercial importance in the 15th century, when access to Bruges by sea was silted up, and the River Scheldt was widened after flooding. Today, the port prospers, and it rivals Rotterdam and Hamburg as a gateway for Europe's imports and exports. Legend has it that a giant called Drouot Antigone was said to demand high tolls from every ship that passed his castle on the Scheldt. Anyone refusing to pay the fee had a hand chopped off. The giant was eventually killed by the Roman soldier Silvius Brabo. He chopped off the giant's hand and threw it into the river. The site where all this took place was called Antwerpen, hand throwing. There is a statue in the Grootmarkt as a modern reminder. In reality, the naming of Antwerp is much more prosaic. The name refers to the city's foundation on an arm of land leading into the river. The Stadhuis was built between 1561 and 1565 to plans by Cornelis de Brient, combining Flemish and Italian styles. The guild houses in the Grootmarkt have been restored over the last few years. The chief painter of the Baroque, Peter Paul Rubens, painted his masterpieces in the city. He doesn't fit the conventional view of an impoverished artist. After making a lot of money painting for the great monarchs in Europe, he built himself a wonderful house on the Wapper. The Cathedral of Our Lady is the largest and most beautiful Gothic church in Belgium. Inside, there are many famous works of art by Rubens, including The Raising of the Cross, and in the transept to the right, The Descent from the Cross. Wander through old alleys and squares near the cathedral. Vlakensgang is a street restored in the style of the 16th century. 17 kilometers southeast of Antwerp lies the city of Leyre, a very similar place to Old Antwerp, with canal-side walks and further architectural interest. Founded in the 8th century, Leyre has always lived in the shadow of its larger neighbour. In the centre of the town is the 14th century turreted Belfort, an attractively spiky affair attached to the classically elegant Rococo-style Stadhuis, which was rebuilt to replace the medieval cloth hall in 1740. Local knowledge has it that Leyre's residents declined a university in favour of a cattle market. This story is said to have resulted in their nickname, Sheepheads, supposedly a reference to their reputation for stubbornness and stupidity. Of course, today's residents wouldn't welcome you for mentioning this. You can reach the Gevangenpoort from the southwest corner of the Grootmarkt. The Eichelstraat leads the way to the strongly fortified medieval gate, which served as the town's prison for many years. Opposite is the curious Emertoren, an old section of ramparts that now house the remarkable clocks and astronomic studio of Ludovic Zimmer. He was a wealthy city merchant who made clocks and dials in a determined effort to dispel superstition and show his fellow townspeople how the cosmos worked. The The centenary clock coordinates the phases of the moon, the zodiac, the tides of Lyre, and just about everything else you can think of. The wonder clock in the pavilion next door is just as detailed and was exhibited at the World's Fairs of Brussels and New York in the 1930s. Here in the Beginhof, a mixture of cosy cottages and cramped terraced houses edge toward the site of the old city walls. Founded in the 13th century, most of the surviving buildings date from the 17th century. The Begine convent is a town unto itself. Stroll through its narrow alleyways, past the low houses and picturesque corners, and be transported from the modern day back to the late 1800s. Back in Antwerp now, and for something completely different. Away from the art and the architecture, tucked behind the railway station, is Antwerp Zoo. This zoological garden is one of the most beautiful in the world. There are more than 6,000 animals of 950 species, and they live in conditions as near to their natural habitats as possible. Time to move on. Our destination, Brussels. Brussels, the heart of Europe. The home of the European Union and NATO, Brussels has cemented its reputation as the most European of cities. Belgium's 10 million inhabitants are divided between the Dutch-speaking Flemings in the north and the French-speaking Walloons in the south. Street signs and public notices appear in both languages. The Belgians are proud of their civil liberties, customs and culture. In Brussels, nearly 1 million people live together under the motto, "We are citizens of the world. In our city, the whole world feels at home." 1/4 of the population of Brussels are not Belgian. They're a determined race and are known for their bad driving. This glassy block houses the European Parliament, its offices edging the very independent nations of Europe ever closer towards the federal dream of its architects. Since Brussels became the home of the European Commission in 1958, the eastern part of the city centre, beyond the boulevards, has been sacrificed to a grey district of administration and government. The most striking aspect of the city is the sharp contrast between the internationalism of the centre and the EU zone and authentic foreignness of its ethnic quarters. Brussels is geographically located at the intersection of two lines from Scotland to Greece and from Spain to Denmark. That line intersects the heart of this great city. Today, the city is host to the European Commission, the Council of Ministers, and NATO, proving that Brussels and bureaucracy seem to be well intertwined. The hub of the Belgian railway system is in Brussels. Since the Channel Tunnel opened, it can be reached by an enjoyable journey travelling on Eurostar. It is also connected to the sea and other towns and cities by the national network of inland waterways. The world-famous mascot Mannequin Piss, a bronze statue of an insolent-looking urinating child, embodies the wild disrespect and ungovernable spirit of the citizens of Brussels. The statue escaped damage during bombardment of the city in 1695, but it's been stolen on a number of occasions. In 1745, the British captured it. 2 years later, the French. He's always been recovered. On high days and holidays, he's dressed in costume. Altogether, he owns 345 uniforms and medals, which are all stored in the Municipal Museum on the Grand Place. In the summer, the Grand Place is the place to see and the place to be seen in. Here is the heart and soul of Brussels, and it has been since the city's earliest days. The Flemish Renaissance-style buildings glitter with ornamentation. Dating from the 1690s, they replace earlier constructions that didn't survive the vagaries of Brussels' turbulent history. In former times, these buildings were the headquarters of the great trading and mercantile guilds, tailors, butchers, brewers, bakers, boatmen, to name a few. Behind many facades are bars, restaurants, jazz cafes. All could be considered 20th century versions of the medieval trades, showing that the Grand Place is a living organism rather than a frozen relic. La Maison du Roi, or King's House, has origins that go back to the 13th century. This once tax office and customs hall looks down on today's modern revelers enjoying refreshment around the Grand Place. As Brussels warms to its new mantle as capital of Europe, the great days of the Grand Place, once the pride of the Habsburg Empire, may be returning. Today, the only invasion the place is likely to see during the summer is one of tourists. At night, the Grand Place is still the place to be seen in. The houses in the narrow alleys off the Grand Place seem to have all been converted to restaurants, all trying to get you to eat in their establishment. The Belgians' healthy appetite for the good life demands high quality from their restaurants. Belgian cuisine is justly famous throughout the world for its quality and quantity. You'll never go hungry in Belgium. More temptation with the antique barrows full of succulent fare placed outside. Take a tram to Avenue Louise, the most elegant shopping street. Brussels proudly claims to possess more shopping arcades than any other city in Europe. Anything the well-heeled Brussels bureaucrat may need, from lace to jewellery, can be found in the many well-known fashion houses. Brussels lace is world famous. The art of lace-making developed here from the mid-19th century, when up to 50,000 women and girls worked as lace-makers. Belgium lace is unsurpassable as regards both the fineness of the thread and the beauty in design. The Belgian people are proud of the tradition of lace making and promote its sale in countless stores around the main tourist hub. Elsewhere, other fashionable names provide a diversion. Brussels Opera House was the scene of the most important historic event in the city. It was here on the night of the 25th of August 1830 that the revolution leading to the country's independence was triggered. The Sacré-Cœur is viewed down a broad avenue of trees and parkland. The layout of the city allows for some interesting vantage points. And here, the work of Victor Horta, Belgium's champion of the Art Nouveau period. Horta's designs for the narrow terraced houses featured a classical nouveau fluid facade with almost casually knotted and twisted ironwork. Horta was architect not only of a selection of Belgium's smaller scale buildings of his time, but also took on complete design projects, including the Hotel Solvay. Alas, much of his work has been destroyed through rebuilding and modernization. The Palais de Justice, the largest building in Brussels, was constructed in the 19th century. It includes the spot where the most common criminals were hanged. The uncommon ones were kept for execution at the Grande Place. Construction spanned a period of spectacular economic and imperial growth. The Palais de la Nation, with its neoclassical facade, houses the chambers of the Belgian Parliament, House of Deputies, and the Senate. Opposite, the City Park, which is laid out with geometrical precision. Time for a tram ride. From the window, you can see many of the splendors of Brussels. Another of the city's spectacular landmarks is the atomium. The giant model of an iron molecule was designed to symbolize the potential of Belgian industry. It's 102 meters high, and each of the 9 spheres has a diameter of 18 meters. 6 of them can be visited by the public. From the topmost sphere, there are good views of the city. The atomium was part of a trade fair display for the 1958 World Exhibition and was due to be dismantled following the event. However, the people of Brussels found the structure so striking that it's remained in situ ever since. Indeed, the monument has become a new symbol for the city, almost as well loved as the mannequin piss. Back on firm ground again, the City Park, once a royal hunting ground, leads directly through to the Royal Palace. It's here that official royal business is conducted, and the building, as well as housing conference facilities, also includes the Royal Chancellery. If the flag is flying from the roof, His Majesty is in residence. With characteristic flair, the Belgians are always ready to celebrate, whether it be the opening of the new trade fair at the Palais Cinquantenaire or an open-air festival. Away from the crowds and more popular tourist areas, Brussels has its quieter corners. Here at St. Catherine's, the steady work of restoration is in hand. Years of grime are being removed and stonework restored to bring this eclectic-styled church back to life. Restoration will take many years. St. Catherine's was built in about 1850 and comprises a blend of Romanesque, Gothic and Renaissance styles. The renovation team faced the challenge of retaining the structure's traditional design features whilst incorporating modern restoration techniques into their work. Excursions can be made with ease from Brussels to other Belgian towns. This is Mechelen. Mechelen can look back on a glorious past. Today, it's known as the City of the Bells, and it's made a name for itself as a carpet producer and a centre for market gardening. In 1559, Mechelen became the religious centre of Belgium, and today the primate of the Catholic Church resides in the town. The Grootmarkt at the centre of the town is a handsome affair and flanked on the eastern side by the Stadhuis. The building was partly altered by Margaret of Austria, a task that today remains incomplete as after her death in 1530, the work was abandoned. In front of the Stadhuis is a modern sculpture of Op Signorg, the city's mascot, being tossed in a blanket. It was once a generalized symbol of male irresponsibility. In 1775, however, a young man from Antwerp attempted to steal it, and the people of Mechelen were convinced he was part of an Antwerp plot to rob them of their cherished mascot. Margaret of Austria looks down on the proceedings from nearby. Her guardian, Emperor Charles V, grew up in the city, and Margaret resided here from 1507 to 1530. The Grootmarkt serves today as a marketplace, as it always has. West of the Grootmarkt, St. Romboud's Cathedral dominates the centre of Mechelen. A gigantic buttressed church attached to a great tower. Work began with the draining of the marshes in the area in 1217, though money ran out before the tower was built, and work stopped for over 200 years whilst the town grew at its base. In 1451, the Pope obligingly provided the extra funds when he put St. Romboud on a list of specified churches where pilgrims could seek absolution for their sins without visiting Rome. The money rolled in, and the present tower was completed in 1546. Today, though, the structure is literally breaking up as it sinks into its foundations. On the outskirts of the city can be found the old 14th century city gates. Whilst traffic circumnavigates the base, a large restoration task has been completed of the building's impressive roof. Another enjoyable day trip, which is less than half an hour by train from Brussels, is Leuven. The Grootmarkt here is an architectural high spot dominated by one particular late Gothic building. The Stadhuis is a decorative affair studded with statues representing everything from important local citizens, artists and nobles to vices and local institutions. The statues date from the 19th century. Until then, the spaces for them stood empty due to a lack of funds. In comparison, across the square is St. Pieterskirk, a sadly unfinished structure dating from the 1420s. It stands minus towers and with weak foundations. Back in Brussels now, and a chance for a glimpse of King Leopold II's Japanese tower. This extraordinary Buddhist pagoda was erected in 1900 after Leopold saw one at the World Fair in Paris. Impressive as it is, it was part built in Brussels and part in Yokohama. This second folly is the Pavilion Chinois, an elegant Chinese pavilion likewise built to the whim of Leopold II. Both buildings are used to house temporary exhibitions and provide an eye-catching change of architecture amidst the leafy suburbs of Brussels. For a museum that absorbs both children and adults for hours, visit the Comic Museum. Inside lies a treasure chest of picture stories. The sweeping staircase serves as a launching pad for the red and white checkered rocket which Tintin and Snowy used to reach Destination Moon. In this museum, Tintin and his friends are everywhere. Their artist-creator, Hergé, introduced them in 1929, and since then, their adventures have entranced the whole world in every imaginable language. The museum is not just dedicated to Hergé's adventures of Tintin, for today's cartoon artists and creators are also honoured. People queue to get their Garfield books signed by his creator, Jim Davis. So we come to the end of our rail journey across Belgium. A fascinating country, rich in history and hungry for the future. A country that is both the gateway to Europe and its heart. As the people of Brussels put it, we are citizens of the world. In our city, the whole world feels at home.